of the climate and project managers for the climate and energy team at LGC. And I'm just here to give you some brief housekeeping before we get right into the presentations. First, we want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors. Without them, this virtual forum would not be possible, especially our promotional partners who are helping us get the word out throughout the state, because we really want to make sure that these resources being presented today are able to access all parts of our state. We also have more upcoming events taking place. We do have a networking activity next week. We enjoy you all to come. It is Pictionary. It's going to be super great. We're going to have individuals break up into teams and play climate and energy Pictionary. And each member of the winning team will receive a $50 gift card to a local business of their choice. We also have more webinars coming up with a lot of great content. You should receive a link to sign up for the networking activity in the chat box. You can also go directly to the SEEC website listed right here. We also created a LinkedIn group called SEEC Peer-to-Peer Network. Just with the challenges of having a virtual event, we understand like networking can be difficult to come by. So we created this platform to give people an opportunity to connect to other climate and energy professionals in their area. So you can also find us on LinkedIn. You should be able to join the group and sign up and connect with your fellow peers. Brief housekeeping, we do ask that you submit your questions primarily through the Q&A box, that you'll see that function listed right there. That is the best function for us because it makes sure that all your questions can get answered, because we don't want to like miss anyone. Also, feel free to engage with your peers in the chat box. And if you have any logistical questions, you can reach out to me or Ryan, Serena on the call. We are the LGC staff and the ones helping doing the behind the scenes of the webinar. And so I'm going to give it away to Marie Gunter, who's going to be the moderator for today's webinar. Marie.
Thank you, Tia, for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you this morning. Thank you, LGC and SEEC, for inviting me to co-host your event. We'd like to extend a very warm welcome to each of you in our audience today. We so appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be with us. Just a quick bit about me and my connection to all of this. I'd say at the core, I am an eco and social justice advocate, and this is an area that I've worked to evolve in both my professional and personal life ventures. I served most recently as the commercial developer for Grid Alternatives based in Oakland, California, from the start of 2019 to most recently. And while my career in solar reaches back over a decade, also been engaged in residential solar development, high performance sales, management, and throughout, also serving as a mentor, speaker, and community representative for diversity in the renewable energy space. Currently, I'm continuing my consulting and advisory solar development work with individuals and community orgs interested to tackle that, the eco-social justice challenge, which we all know is huge, and where solars plus batteries are just highly essential as a component to that end, which makes this really highly relevant for this conversation today. As a topic so many are absolutely needing to delve into a little bit more deeply. As part of that work, one of my key goals has and will continue to be to bring more African American youth and particularly women into the renewable solar energy industry, where there is a sparse amount of us, not only for development, but internships, full-time employment in fully supported leadership roles, which is something that is currently lacking. I'd be delighted to connect with anyone to have that conversation in the coming weeks, if that is something that is of interest to you. But before we get started, I'm very excited to introduce our speakers. I do want to take a moment. We're at a time in the universe where we have an evolving of consciousness taking place. So I do feel it appropriate to just take a second to acknowledge that we are all in this space struggling with some pretty serious issues. One of the first things I think that a lot of us are coming to recognize is our connection to all other people. And for that, I just want to say how fortunate I feel to be here, and that we are with one another. This opportunity to live and work and basically conduct all aspects of our life here. I'm in the Bay Area, Oakland, where I sit on the traditional homeland of the Ohlone. I want to also acknowledge the ravaging effects of COVID-19 and the fires that are reaching through our communities. And many of you have friends and family who have been affected. I do hope and pray that they will be as well as can be. Fires, decimating precious life and the infrastructure so critical to our economy and in individual and collective health. I want to acknowledge the brutality of systematic racism, most specifically is that which is targeted at Black American men, women, and children. This is a reality that many are only now beginning to wake up to. So building resiliency, the topic of today's webinar is, in my opinion, at the heart of these matters when we honor humanity, and the very earth that we walk upon. When individuals are healed, families and communities are healed, the land is healed because we come to understand the right relationship and the responsibilities that we carry to, and what it means to be human on this earth, creating a deeper cycle and sense of healing and balance versus destruction and insanity. So with that, as I said, I'm very excited to introduce our three expert presenters who've agreed so graciously to offer their time to share a vast and broad spectrum of experience and knowledge with us here today. The seminar session, in case you missed it, is Maximizing the Value of Resiliency Programs, Case Study and Resources, Leading Edge Approaches to Region-Wide Energy Resilience Programs that maximize economic, climate, and reliability benefits. So I'm going to take myself off video. First up is going to be Jamie Tuckey. She's the Director of the Strategic Initiatives for MCE, Marine Clean Energy. You might have heard the slogan, My Choice, My Energy. She has over a decade of industry experience and leading in key initiatives in her community, bringing both extensive knowledge of the history, the growth, and operations of community choice programs throughout the Bay Area and across California. As the Director of Strategic Initiatives, Jamie works closely with her CEO as a strategist and implementer on mission-critical initiatives like resiliency, microgrids, and equity. So welcome, Jamie.
Thank you so much, Marie. Thank you so much for that introduction and opening remarks. That was really important and heartfelt. Can everyone see my screen? I believe there should be a PowerPoint, MCE Energy Storage Program. I believe it's up there, so I'm going to just go ahead and get started. A little bit about MCE. We are California's first community choice aggregator. We're a not-for-profit public agency that began service in 2010, and we were really happy to just celebrate our 10-year anniversary. Our goal is to provide cleaner power at stable rates to our customers, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and to invest in local energy programs that support our community's needs. We serve more than 1 million people in 34 communities across Contra Costa, Marin, Napa, and Solano counties in the Bay Area. And I want to talk a little bit about the Public Safety Power Shutoff impacts that we saw in our 4 counties in 2019. There were more than 260,000 accounts that experienced at least one PSPS event, impacting roughly 600,000 people without power. There were more than 70,000 accounts that experienced 3 or more of those public safety power shutoffs. And some of the outages lasted several days, 2 or more. And so, that is really what inspired MCE to take action to help our communities to be more resilient. We know many people use diesel generators as backup power, but they are so polluting to our air and they're so bad for our health. And especially with COVID-19, it seems really more important than ever that we have clean and healthy solutions for backup power and that they're accessible to everyone in our communities, not just the people with a bunch of money to pay for them up front. So we came up with a vision for our program. we wanted to offer customer-sited fossil-free storage to serve two primary purposes. The first is resiliency with backup power, with clean backup power. And the second would be the ability to shift a load away from peaks with a special technology on the batteries that would basically allow MCE to remotely control the charge and discharge of the batteries for these customers. So there's a value side for the customer, and there's also a value side for MCE. In addition to the resilience, customers can see bill savings with these batteries because we can reduce demand charges and the need to use electricity during peak pricing when costs are higher. We can lower emissions because we can program the batteries to charge and utilize as much solar generation as possible. And we can also contribute to local benefits. Participation in this program helps to create a healthy and reliable local grid because we can reduce congestion by controlling the charge and discharge of those batteries. And it also creates opportunities for local jobs and workforce development in this space and creating support for local businesses. We had we had this big vision and really creative idea. It was new to the market, hadn't really been done, and we needed to think about how we were going to implement it. We realized right away that this wasn't something that we were going to be able to do on our own, and we'd need to find partners to help us implement it. And with the big vision, we realized we needed to take it into phases. And so the first phase is to deploy the batteries to our customers. So our initial 2-year goal is to deploy 15 megawatt hours of battery storage to our customers. We are increasing that to 70 megawatt hours over 5 years. That's our longer term goal. Our second phase of the program is actually to enable this remote controlling of the batteries, the monitoring and control. And then the third phase that we're looking at is to enable future revenue streams for our organization by integrating the storage into the California Independent System Operator scheduling. And basically that means that MCE could aggregate all of the storage systems and dispatch them to collectively reduce our customers' demand. And we can actually make money from this because we can commit to the California Independent System Operator the day ahead when they need demand on the grid to be reduced. We can say, we can do that, we can get our customers to reduce demand, and we can do that by using these batteries. So the very first thing that we needed to figure out is, how are we going to pay for this? Who's going to pay for it? And so our board created a $6 million resiliency fund to help support this program and other efforts to make our communities more resilient. And we wanted to lean on a statewide program called the Self-Generation Incentive Program. It's a California Public Utilities Commission program that provides really generous incentives to actually help pay for these batteries that are customer owned. In PG&E's service area, there was more than $200 million available to customers who wanted to purchase and install batteries. And if you're talking statewide, beyond just PG&E's territory, there was over 500 million available. We also applied for a local grant from the Marin Community Foundation, and we were awarded $750,000 to help support our program with a special focus on income qualified multifamily housing, as well as nonprofit social safety nets. So I mentioned earlier that we knew we weren't going to be able to do this alone. So one of the very first things we did was create a request for proposals. So in December 2019, we released an RFP. We really weren't sure what kind of response we were going to get. We had heard feedback that, our hopes shouldn't be too high because this was a new and different type of thing that hadn't really been done. But we received over 18 responses, which was really great. We were happy about that. And we interviewed the top 4. And we ended up selecting TRC engineers. So they are our primary contractor who is helping us to launch, manage, and implement the program. And I will say that, even between the two organizations, it still wasn't enough to complete this or implement this big program. So they've got over a dozen subcontractors as well to help support the implementation. And that includes the battery developers, local installers, and data management providers, to name a few. So I talked earlier about how the batteries would have technology that would allow us to control them remotely. And this slide really breaks down exactly how we would control them. So we needed to figure out, what does that actually look like? What's that going to be like for the customer? And the first use case is for daily peak load management. And the goal of that is to reduce demand on the grid during peak times using stored energy in the battery. So that means that in the morning and early afternoon during off-peak times when costs are lower, the battery will charge up first from the solar that's on site, and then from the grid when the costs are lower. Then later on in the day, when costs are higher during on-peak times, typically 4 to 9 p.m., the battery will be programmed to discharge so that the building it's connected with will automatically pull power from the battery before pulling it from the grid. And that helps lower costs for our customers. The second and third use cases are going to be for when the battery is needed for backup power and resiliency. So there, of course, are the planned public safety power shutoffs. And sometimes we get a fair amount of notice in advance of those, 24 hours or more, sometimes less. But with that notice, the battery can set a plan for itself to charge to full capacity in advance of the planned shutoff. And it can do it in a way that's smart, again, so that it's utilizing off-peak and lower cost power and power from the solar as well. The third, of course, is an emergency outage where you really don't get much notice, slim to none at all. And in that case, the battery will immediately begin charging if there's time, and if not, it will begin discharging. We next needed to develop, okay, well, what is the offering going to be for customers? How are we going to message this? How are we going to get people to be interested? And the offering is really generous. So for this program, MCE plans, designs, and installs the battery. And I'll say, of course, we do that with our partner, but the program is white labeled. So for the customer, they assume that MCE plans, designs, and installs it. And then this is a customer-owned battery that is at a greatly reduced, or for our most vulnerable customers, at no cost to them. We do this by combining incentives from, again, the statewide SEEC program, incentives from MCE. We also give customers a monthly bill credit of $10 to $200 per month, depending on the size of the storage, in exchange for allowing us to program those batteries. And they get reduced costs on their bill, as mentioned before, because of the smart charging and discharging. Next, we need to figure out, okay, we want to be able to give these for as free or as little cost as possible for our most vulnerable customers. And we needed to identify who would be eligible for this program. Who are the most vulnerable, which serve critical needs, how do we maximize our funding streams, and are there any technical or physical site requirements we need to keep in mind? And so we decided that we would mirror the SEEC program so that we could maximize those funds and make sure that we could apply those for our customers and to simplify the eligibility for our program. SEEC also prioritizes the most vulnerable customers, which was in line with our values. And that includes customers who are, in a greater danger of, being in a high fire threat district, already experiencing public safety power shutoffs, low income, or disadvantaged communities. And we also require that the sites have existing or planned solar. And that ensures that the batteries provide greater resiliency and that they're charged with clean power. This is a quick slide that I'm not really going to go over in detail, but it shows illustrative costs for different customer types for installing a battery. And the main takeaway is that depending on the customer, they could get a battery with anywhere from 35 to 100% of the cost of the battery being covered through the program. For a residential customer, you can get a $20,000 battery at no cost, which is pretty generous. We've done a bunch of marketing. We've worked with our local government offices of OES and Health and Human Services to identify our most critical facility. We did targeted email and mail marketing campaigns to our eligible customers. And after just 1 month of marketing, we've got over 150 customers enrolled or in the pipeline for the program. And so this is my last slide, and I'll just close with some of the key opportunities, challenges, and lessons that we have seen so far. One, I would just say there's a huge opportunity. The market is really ready for this, and for customers who are able to pay, they are willing to. It's amazing to be able to offer the batteries at no cost to, you know, some of the most vulnerable customers, but we have had a huge demand for this, and that was a nice find. I would recommend, if you were to launch a program like this, to lead with messaging that allows for flexibility in the program offering and incentives. Because there has been so much demand and such a willingness to pay, we are moving into a second phase of our program to reduce the amount of incentives that MCE will provide to customers who are not vulnerable. I'd also recommend planning for as much time as possible for program and design and rollout. Although we launched this to our customers a month ago, we are still working out and ironing out a lot of the details of the program, but we wanted to make sure that we wouldn't miss out on funding opportunities like with SCHIP. And the last thing I'll say is that data is super important. I think we all know that, but eligibility data can also be really tricky. We've had an issue with several of our SCHIP applications being rejected by PG&E because the data that they initially provided indicated that there were two or more PSPS events making customers eligible. And now we're hearing that the data was wrong and it was only one. So we're working through those kinks. But anyway, thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. And I will hand it back over to Marie. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you so much. And congratulations on your 10-year anniversary celebration.
Thank you.
Yeah, continues to provide such great services to the community it serves, and we so appreciate you and the efforts of MCE. Just a quick reminder to our audience, I see some questions coming in, and some of those, Jeannie, look to be directed to you. So if you take the time to go ahead and check those out at the end, we will be setting some time aside. If you haven't already posted your question, I just encourage you to go into the Q&A and post there. Okay, our next presenter is from Terra Verde, which is an independent energy advisory firm that supports CCAs, public agencies and commercial enterprises in developing and deploying intelligent energy strategies. David Burdick is with us. He's the Executive VP of Business Development. David supports CCAs and public agencies in evaluating and deploying programs that capitalize on eco and resiliency benefits of solar plus battery systems, including transit agencies, school districts, municipalities, and water agencies in evaluating, deploying, and managing intelligent energy programs such as solar PV projects, battery energy usage storage projects, resiliency programs, facility microgrids, and DER programs. Thank you, David, for all the work that your team is doing, and we're ready for your presentation if you are.
Great, thank you, Marie. And good morning, everybody. And so glad to be a part of today's conversation. What a timely subject matter to think about resiliency. I mean, our state has been suffering through so much for so long, and then now, right here this week, the rolling blackouts, smoke-filled skies. Our state needs cleaner, cheaper, more reliable electricity. And I'm pleased to be sharing with you today some of the great work that's happening throughout the state, primarily with community choice energy agencies who are driving forward programs that can unlock the value from both an environmental and a financial perspective from technologies like battery energy storage systems. As Marie mentioned, Terra Verde Energy is an independent advisory firm. We support CCAs as well as other California public agencies in evaluating their opportunities, figuring out which kinds of financing strategies and funding opportunities and technologies and programs make sense for their agency. and then putting together the implementation plan and then executing on those programs. You can see here an example of some of the teams that we're working with. I'll highlight some examples a little bit further in the presentation, but just to level set, when we talk about distributed energy resources, we're talking about smaller devices deployed at homes and businesses and at schools and at city and county facilities scattered throughout the state that can provide all sorts of value, both when the grid is up as well as when the grid is down. A lot of technologies that are being focused on right now, battery energy storage, of course, because of the backup power benefits, solar PV, a long-standing technology that has been deployed throughout our state to help decarbonize power generation in our state. But then now there's also the ability to integrate other technologies such as electric vehicle charging equipment or smart thermostats or electrified water heaters, where these technologies can be used to provide benefits to the consumer, to the homeowner, to the residents, to the business, but they can also be used to provide value to the grid, a grid that is desperately in need of support here in the state of California. And community choice energy agencies are positioned in a very unique place in the marketplace to be able to unlock some of those value streams. And they also typically have, as a part of their core mission, the emphasis and the drive to decarbonize and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which these technologies are extremely effective at. I'll give you a couple of examples of the kind of programs we're describing. For example, Terra Verde is supporting Peninsula Clean Energy and its part in a wider partnership with other CCAs, including East Bay Community Energy and Silicon Valley Clean Energy, in a program that's deploying solar and battery energy storage systems throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. And these resources are going to be used both by the residences as well as the businesses, and then at the same time used by these CCAs to help reduce their costs and to provide cheaper, cleaner electricity to their communities. They're targeting specifically a use case where these battery energy storage systems can be used to help shape the load to reduce the requirements for a capacity product in the California markets known as resource adequacy. And this is that specific product that helps alleviate some of the challenges that we're seeing right now on the grid, where there's a tremendous amount of need for electricity relative to the increased temperatures that we're seeing here in the state. And it's programs like this that are going to do a more effective job of creating multiple value streams, both for community members as well as the organizations responsible with managing electricity for that region. And it's an excellent example of the kind of programs that should be considered throughout our state. In Southern California, we're working with Lancaster Choice Energy with a team of folks that are supporting the deployment of what's called the Green District Program. This is a program that's going to encompass a whole portfolio of technologies, including batteries, but also electric vehicle charging equipment, smart thermostats, and those water heaters, targeting a broad range of customers, including their municipal customers, but also their residential and commercial customers. And this will be a technology application where all of those resources will be intelligently connected into a virtual power plant, and then that can be flexibly dispatched against various value streams within the marketplace. And so the key message here is that these technologies can provide value both to customers as well as to load-serving entities, and can truly make a powerful difference both from an environmental and a financial perspective here in the state of California. Just to give you a very high-level overview of how do you take the opportunity of these programs and get to an implementation plan that makes sense. First is to understand the landscape, understand from a data-driven perspective, what are the particular needs of your community? What are the current financing sources available for these types of programs? For example, as Jamie mentioned, MCE's leveraging the self-generation incentive program is an excellent way to think about taking stock of what's going on in the marketplace and leveraging the incentives and the dollars available now to deploy the right technologies in a prioritized fashion. But being able to understand what's going on from a customer perspective or from an aggregate load perspective within a specific region, what are the particular products that can meet the greatest needs there? And then how could those products be catered into a program that will effectively see deployment of those systems at scale. We're pleased to announce that we've been working with MCE as well as the Climate Center on a software platform that will be available for CCAs later this year, known as Navigator. And I'll be giving you just a brief sneak peek at this at the conclusion of today's presentation. But Navigator is the tool that will allow CCAs and other load serving entities to be able to understand their customer data, understand these market variables, and to be able to better prioritize and design programs that can meet community needs at scale. Beyond understanding what's going on in the marketplace, having a very refined approach to procuring the projects or the resources or the services that are needed is another key element to deploying effective programs. Here you see just a few bullet points for informing an efficient request for proposal or a solicitation process, including things like having very clear specifications and goals, while at the same time leaving room for the marketplace to provide innovation in their responses. For example, as MCE, as Jamie mentioned, it's going to take time for you to really dig into and understand how to appropriately design a program. But the more you're able to be clear about in your thinking how you want to approach a particular program, the better outcomes you're going to see from the marketplace. And on this note, one of the things I'd highly encourage, earlier this year, LADWP hosted a working session where staff members from their municipal utility encouraged to the table the vendor community who are out there responding to and deploying these types of programs in a working session to collaborate and solicit feedback so that they could better align their programs with what's currently taking place in the market. And that type of collaboration and deep thinking is what leads to clear specifications and best value and scale through these programs. One other element that I would encourage for our CCA staff members who are in the audience or any of our public agency members who are in the process of deploying these types of programs, I would highly encourage you to think about developing your own template contracts that you want to bring forward through these solicitations. There's a lot of value engineering that can be done prior to the solicitation that can help make sure that when these contracts go forward, they put your agency in a very strong negotiating position as you go to the market. And then lastly, the success of these programs is typically tied to having a clear path to administering the program so that you have transparent visibility into the early leading stage indicators for what's truly taking place within that program. And so making sure that you have a administration plan that allows frequent and clear feedback from how your customers are reacting to your program, how the vendors are performing as they're going to market to deploy projects or their services within your service territory. And so having the right KPIs and the right program feedback structure so that you can properly understand what's going on in the implementation phase of your programs is an essential element to improving the success and the scale of your programs. So as I mentioned, Navigator is a software platform coming live to the state of California, funded by the California Energy Commission. And we're so extremely proud of the work that's come through this. I'll just give you a quick introduction to it, and then we'll pass the mic back to Marie. Navigator is a tool that allows load serving entities to upload segments of their customer data and to be able to see how that set of customers is using electricity in aggregate within their service territory. So they might, for example, be looking at a segment of their commercial and industrial customer base, or maybe looking at how do the medically vulnerable customers within this service territory use electricity, and how might that inform programs that we want to design around that customer base. Beyond creating the data visualization and informing just an understanding of how electricity is being used, Navigator allows customer program team members or procurement team members to be able to model various types of programs, looking at all sorts of different types of technologies that are used for various different types of applications, and then to see, based on the customer load data, the retail and the wholesale pricing within that service territory, what would the related greenhouse gas emission benefits and or customer bill impacts or CCA procurement cost impacts look like? For example, you're seeing here a comparison of 3 different scenarios. It's the same technology targeting the same customer base, but used in a slightly different way in every case. And you can see here for each individual customer, how that particular program would impact their bills and how it would impact the greenhouse gas emissions associated with their electricity usage. So again, so thrilled to be bringing Navigator forward. Stay tuned. If you're interested and would like more information, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to help include you in the process of making Navigator the success we know that it can be. With that, I'll turn it back over to Marie, and we'll look forward to getting to your questions later on in the presentation.
Thank you, David. Excellent presentation. We appreciate you and all the hard work that Terra Verde is doing, along with the important stakeholder collaborations with orgs that are creating these important programs and value streams. Navigator looks very interesting, and we'll look forward to learning a little bit more about this tool, and our audience. You've extended this invitation for them to check it out, so please reach out to David if you have more questions. We're going to move on to our final presenter for today. This is with the Climate Center. Our representative here is Woody Hastings. He is the Energy Program Manager, amongst hosting many other roles. He serves as an energy and policy analyst, community organizer, and several other roles across the organization, working for nonprofit, government, and private sectors. He specializes, though, in community choice energy, a state policy that fosters energy democracy by empowering communities to establish their own non-for-profit electricity services, thereby wresting control over the decision-making about how energy sources for electricity is generated. So welcome, Woody. We look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you very much, Marie, and thank you everyone else. This is me. I've got my video on at the moment, but I do have bandwidth issues here where I am. So I'm gonna actually go ahead and turn my video off, so you'll just hear my voice as we go through the slides. So doing that now. Okay, so hope everyone can hear me. Go back to that intro slide. I want to linger on that just for a moment. So thanks again. Very honored. The Climate Center is very honored to be a participant in this effort. The Climate Center was founded in 2001. We're based in Sonoma County, but we work on statewide policy issues. Our flagship program is Climate Safe California, which relates very much to what this program is all about, the Building Efficiency Optimization Program. We have other sub-programs, the Advanced Community Energy and Community Energy Resilience, and as Marie mentioned, the Community Choice Energy efforts underway. So a variety of programs. So would encourage folks to check out what we're doing at our website, theclimatecenter.org. Okay. Go to the next slide, please. So why is the Climate Center involved in this project? Well, ultimately, what we're talking about here for us is the potential with well-designed projects and deployments of greenhouse gas reductions. We are also certainly very interested in and concerned about the co-benefits of addressing equity issues and increasing reliability and resilience and you know, obtaining a local economic value and looking at how the overall system can benefit. So, but our ultimate involvement comes down to the fact that, yes, we can have some greenhouse gas emission reductions. Next slide, please. So I was asked to talk a little bit about the policy drivers. What was the initial impetus for this project? And there were really two main ones, legislative and regulatory. But in thinking about it, there's several other reasons why these kinds of projects are imperative. And so the actions on the part of the governor, actions in the courts, the CCAs themselves, and then as we are seeing playing out in real time, some wild cards. So you can move to the next slide. Legislatively, the initial impetus were two bills, AB 802 and SB 350, and this is maybe an indicator of how rapidly things move forward, which is that SB 350 has already been superseded in 2018 by SB 100. So those are the renewables goals for the state of California, and AB 802 benchmarking for energy efficiency, so that we can apply some metrics to how we are, the degree to which we are actually gaining results from deploying DERs and other technologies in the built environment to advance efficiency. So next slide. So unpacking that a little bit in the regulatory side. On the regulatory side, it's the California Public Utilities Commission and CEC that cross the T's and dot the I's on the legislation. So in both the case of SB 100 and AB 802 being administered by those agencies. And so there are some details there in the slides. I presume folks will be getting the slides. There's also, other regulatory arena, as Jamie mentioned, the SCHIP program. There's distributed resource planning, integrated resource planning, and microgrids proceeding underway currently that are also really drivers in this arena. So yeah, that's a key part of the whole thing. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, actions on the part of the governor, in the Brown administration in 2018, the executive order that's really been reaffirmed by the Newsom administration, and there's talk of codifying some of the aspects of achieving carbon neutrality by 2045. We think that the Climate Center wants to really push the envelope and advance these goals as much as possible. We are, as we all know, currently already in the age of consequences of the climate crisis. So we need to expedite all of these actions. Next slide. CCAs themselves, they have been a key driver in all of this. When we first applied for this project, there were only 5 operational CCAs. There are now, over 20. All of the goals and really reflecting the interests and values and urgency that I think that on the part of the communities in which these CCAs operate, we're seeing this as a real powerful driver of pushing the envelope on advancing efficiency and optimization of deployments. Next slide. So the wild cards, yeah, the wildfires that we've experienced, over the last few years and currently, public safety power shutoffs, the bankruptcy, COVID-19. So, when I was thinking about what are the drivers, there's really these drivers that are unexpected drivers, and I wanted to include them, so I did. And I just don't want to leave out local government and community. I did leave it out here, and as I was thinking about it this morning, I'm like, well, there's really a lot of the driver comes from the bottom up. It's the communities. I think next slide. Yeah, and just I don't want to. I think that there are some opportunities. When you see entire swaths of the built environment. This is a scene of Coffey Park, which is, it's not Chaparral, it's not Wildland, it's not mountains. This was the flats on the west side of the Highway 101 in Sonoma County, and rebuilding smarter, cleaner, more efficient, and addressing some of the root causes in the first place of the fires by addressing emissions and other aspects, I think is important. Next slide. So just to say that the COVID situation has slowed some things down and caused some delays in requirements under AB 802 and the benchmarking program. And so, it's just one of those things, and wanted to mention that as just sort of an impact. So next slide. So in conclusion, the initial drivers, the legislation and regulatory matters remain relevant. although evolving. There are these new policy drivers that help strengthen the impetus for and importance of these kinds of DER deployments. And as I've mentioned, the wild cards continue to strengthen the rationale. I think that's my last slide. So happy to go to questions and answers and help in responding to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Woody. That was a great presentation. I really appreciate the framework that you provided for understanding the work that the Climate Center is getting after, particularly the importance of policy work that is both in progress and that which, needs a push. As you mentioned, we need to expedite these policies, rather like post haste. For those of you that aren't familiar, I encourage you to take a look into the work of the Climate Center. This is an organization whose primary focus is to accelerate climate solutions, which I think we can all agree is a central theme driving so much of our collective work. And, Woody, since you opted to help kick off the Q&A, which is our next item, I was wondering if you want to, share what you think might be a current policy that those of us here on the webinar today might look into to support, and what steps might we take to help expedite that.
Thank you, Marie. And I'm going to try to have my video on. If I start breaking up, please let me know and I'll take myself back off screen. Right now, we are immersed. We, the Climate Center, are immersed. We're a party to the proceeding in the California Public Utilities Commission microgrid proceeding. And we are really pushing strong to have the control of how local deployments, local energy resources are developed, to have that be in the control of the community. That's really the essence of it, because there is a continued trend toward really keeping that control, and the investor-owned utilities are working to keep that control in their hands. And the commission, there are proposals from the staff that really just sort of continue to feed into that and don't create a situation that we'd like to see, where the delivery utilities are providing the resources for rapid interconnections, for sharing of data that's needed to share with the local communities and tribal governments and others, to be able to optimize what they are doing. So I would point to it's pursuant to Senator Henry Stern's SB 1339, and it's a microgrids proceeding. And so that's really what I'm focusing on a lot. And if folks are interested in helping advance that kind of push toward more community energy resilience through community microgrids, that's a good place to do it, I think.
Yeah, that's super helpful. It really, helps people to have something to grasp onto, something concrete. And we appreciate that. So I see we do have a few other questions, and I believe we still do have time to address at least a couple of these. One question coming through is, and I'll just address it to the panel, so please feel free to jump in. Has to do with MCE storage program. What proportion of critical facilities, buildings in the MCE storage program were public schools versus municipal fire stations or healthcare or other community facilities?
Yeah, well, at this point in the program, we are still collecting and enrolling participants. So for the non-residential side, we've got about 7 so far. So the percentages don't make as much sense this early on in the program. But for eligibility, for how we're selecting these, for one, I'll start with how we selected them. The first thing we did was reached out to our local government contacts, our county OES and HHS departments, and also our cities and towns, and asked for a list of facilities in their communities that had a a real need for resiliency and backup power. So we put that full list together. That was, months in the making and well before we launched this program. We then decided that we were going to be using funding through the Self-Generation Incentive Program, and that we would mirror our eligibility for that program with the SCHIP rules. And so SCHIP prioritizes the most vulnerable customers, and the eligibility for those most vulnerable customers has 100% of the cost covered. The eligibility means that the site needs to have a greater need for resiliency, either in a high fire threat district or having experienced multiple public safety power shutoffs. And that facility has to serve customers who are in disadvantaged communities or low income communities. And they have to be defined as the SCHIP definition of a critical facility. A school does not meet the SCHIP definition of a critical facility unless it is used as like an emergency operations center or a community resource center, so that when there's an outage, folks can go there. And many schools do have that. So that's sort of a high level overview. I said we've had about 7 sites in the program so far. We've had 1 fire station. We do have 1 school who is looking into participating, although they would have to contribute some funding of their own because they don't meet the highest level for funding. We have some municipal facilities. We have a recycling center in the East Bay that's used as an emergency operations center. We have another municipal facility that serves as an emergency shelter, where about 600 people can come if they need to evacuate from their homes. So that's sort of a high level overview. Hopefully that answers the question. Oh, Marie, you're on mute.
Thank you. I just saying thank you so much. Just wanted to acknowledge that was Alice who asked the question before it kind of vanished from the chat box. Alice, if that did not completely satisfy your curiosity, please feel free to post an extension to that in the box before the end of the session. There is another question that has come through I'd like to read. This is from Claire Warshaw. Even though enforcement of AB 802 building efficiency has been delayed until September 1st, 2020, that is just around the corner, how do those who own buildings realize this legislation and process?
How do they realize it?
Yeah, I'm not 100% clear.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm not sure exactly what that is. I don't, as far as I know, that is currently still the timeline. It could be moved again. So I think that the regulated community in that arena, would need to check in and just sort of find out, through the CPUC what the status of that is, and I can find that information and provided I don't have that handy with me at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Claire just posted a clarification, which is how do existing building owners come to know about this work, is I think what she was looking for.
Right. David, do you have a sense of that?
I don't, but I have a great resource to point them to in the Climate Center's website, where they can find great updates on the emerging legislation around that. But I would say to Woody's point, we can provide follow-up information.
Thank you.
Yeah, there are program administrators that we can point them to.
Excellent. Good question. Our question coming up next is from Allison. Do we know how many battery storage systems and sizes are or were provided to what customer types in the SCHIP program? Where could one find that data on the implementation of the SCHIP program?
I can take that question if you'd like. Jamie, it looks like you were going to respond.
Go ahead.
Sure. So being a statewide program, there is a lot of publicly available information at selfgenca.com. If you just Google Self-Generation Incentive Program or SGIP, it should take you to the site. And on the website, you'll find links to documents and forms, and you can actually pull down an Excel file that shows all of the applications with quite a bit of information back to the original launch of the program, but including all of the recent applications to show which developers and for which type of customer segment. So it won't show you the organization that's receiving the project. It won't give you the address. So there's some privacy restrictions there, but you can filter for how many projects, what's the size of those projects, what's the incentive level for those projects, who are the developers for those projects, and which utility markets for those projects. So a lot of publicly available information at selfgenca.com.
Thanks, David. And attendees, you'll note that the panelists have provided a couple of links in the chat to reference a couple of the questions that have been asked. You can go there to find the link to the Climate Center's Climate Safe California's campaign. And thank you, Barry, for that. And Jamie has provided a link to selfgenca.com. So if you'd like more information, please go ahead and follow that link.
And in a moment, I will, sorry to interrupt, but in a moment, I will add the compliance website at the Energy Commission for the benchmarking program.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, this concludes our Q&A session. I'm really appreciative of all of our presenters today. This has been not just informative, but also just a great way to bring colleagues and attendees together in a space where really there's so much knowledge out there. And I think it's these types of events that help us more easily access and have acquisition to the details that we need to do our own work in the community. And for those who are not doing the work currently and you're just sort of aspiring and looking into this, hopefully inspire you to reach out to any or all of us to get more details or get the encouragement that you need or resources that you're trying to connect to. So I want to thank all of you. I'm going to turn it back to Tia now, so she can give us next steps and let us know what's going to be happening next in this webinar series. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure. Tia, over to you.
Thank you, Marie. I'm going to share my screen very briefly so you all can see. Again, we want to thank all of the amazing speakers for coming up to provide these resources to everyone today. We really appreciate taking time out of your busy schedule to do so. Again, again, we do have upcoming events that we really want to encourage you all to attend and share with your networks. We're trying our best to provide resources to local agencies throughout the state who want to continue this work. To do so, you can register for these events on our website. You can see it right here. We will also be posting a link to a post-webinar survey. We are trying our best to provide you all with helpful resources, but we really want to get your feedback. So for instance, if one webinar is a hit or miss, we really want to get that critical feedback so we can continue providing you all with resources that are helpful. And we also want to give another final shout out to our sponsors for providing us with the resources we need to continue this forum. Of course, we were hoping to do it in person, but 2020 just is a curveball for everything and everyone. So we thank you all for your patience and of course, attending it in a virtual format. I know I personally experienced some Zoom fatigue, so we appreciate all the panelists and participants for coming out today. So thank you again for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon and you're able to stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.